Inside the holy city, a mother is cooking. The heavy, sweet smell of roasted meat drifts through the narrow, starving alleyways of Jerusalem. But it is 70 AD, and there's no livestock left, no grain, no hope. Outside the door, a group of rebel soldiers smells the aroma. They are starving wolves, their ribs pressing against their skin, their eyes wild with hunger. They smell food, and they do not care who they have to kill to get it. They kick down the door, swords drawn, demanding the meat. The woman, a noblewoman named Mary, looks at them with a hollow, terrifying calmness. She invites them in. She tells them she has saved a very special portion just for them. She uncovers the dish. The soldiers, men who have slaughtered Romans, men who have tortured their own neighbors for a handful of barley, stop dead in their tracks. They drop their swords. They start to retch, because lying on the platter is not a lamb. It is the half-eaten body of her own son. This is not a myth. This is the documented reality of the siege of Jerusalem. When we think of Roman victories, we think of marble statues and golden eagles, but the victory in 70 AD was built on a foundation of nightmare. If you seek the unfiltered truths of our past, subscribe now and join our legion. Let's descend into the abyss. To understand how a mother could reach that point of madness, we have to rewind the clock. We have to look at the trap that Rome set. The year is 70 AD. The province of Judea has been in open revolt against the Roman Empire for 4 years. They have embarrassed the legions. They have ambushed patrols. They have declared their independence. But Rome does not forgive embarrassment. The Emperor Vespasian sends his son Titus to finish the job. Titus is young, ambitious, and ruthless. He arrives at the gates of Jerusalem not with a diplomatic envoy, but with 4 legions, 60,000 of the most disciplined killers on the planet. But Titus has a weapon far more effective than catapults or swords. He has timing. When the Roman legions arrive, it is Passover, the holiest time of the Jewish calendar. The city of Jerusalem, which usually holds a manageable population, is swollen with pilgrims. Hundreds of thousands of people have traveled from all over the region to worship at the temple. They brought their families. They brought their faith, but they did not bring enough food for a siege. Titus sees this. He smiles, and he snaps the trap shut. He doesn't attack the walls immediately. Instead, he orders his men to build a wall of their own, a circumvallation wall. It is an engineering miracle. In just 3 days, the Roman soldiers build a 5-mile-long barrier around the entire city of Jerusalem. The message is clear. No one comes out. No supplies go in. Jerusalem is no longer a city. It is a cage. And inside that cage, the clock begins to tick. In the first few weeks, there is hope. The walls of Jerusalem are thick. The defenders are fanatical. They believe God is on their side. But God cannot create grain out of stone. As the supplies begin to dwindle, the society inside the walls begins to fracture. You might think that facing a common enemy would unite the people. It does the opposite. The city is controlled by different rebel factions, and they hate each other almost as much as they hate the Romans. In a display of sheer madness, one faction burns the city's grain silos to fight the other faction. In one night, years' worth of food goes up in smoke. It is a suicide note written in fire. Now, the hunger truly begins. At first, the poor die. They die quietly in the streets. Then, the middle class begins to starve. Money becomes meaningless. You could have a bag of gold coins, but you cannot eat gold. A single measure of barley sells for a fortune. People begin to eat anything they can find. They strip the leather off their shields and boil it to make a chewy, tasteless paste. They eat the leather straps of their sandals. They pull up the grass growing in the cracks of the stone streets. They search through the sewers for old animal dung to find undigested seeds. But the hunger is not the only horror. The rebel gangs turn on the population. They transform into inquisitors of food. If a person looks too healthy, if their face is a little too round, the rebels assume they are hoarding food. They break into homes. They torture civilians. They hang them up by their thumbs. They beat them, demanding to know where the hidden grain is. Often, there is no grain. The person is just dying slower than everyone else. Desperation drives people to the walls. At night, starving civilians try to sneak out of the city, hoping to scavenge for roots or herbs in the valleys, or hoping to surrender to the Romans for a piece of bread. But Titus is watching. He wants to break the spirit of the city, so he orders his men to catch these refugees. He does not imprison them, he crucifies them. The historian Josephus tells us that the Romans caught 500 people every single day. 500. They ran out of wood for crosses. They ran out of space to put them. The hills surrounding Jerusalem became a forest of dead bodies, twisting in the wind. Inside the city, the defenders look out from the walls and see their wives, their brothers, their children dying in agony. But instead of surrendering, it drives them deeper into madness. And this brings us back to the house of Mary. By the summer of 70 AD, the heat is unbearable. The smell of death hangs over the city like a fog because there is no one left strong enough to bury the dead. They simply throw the bodies over the walls or pile them in large houses and seal the doors. Mary was a woman of wealth. She had fled to Jerusalem for safety, but her wealth made her a target. Every day, the rebels broke into her house, stealing the little food she had left. Finally, she had nothing. She sat in her empty house, holding her infant son. The baby was too weak to cry. Her own milk had dried up. She looked at the child, and her mind finally snapped. According to the history books, she looked into the eyes of her son and said, "Poor little mite, in war, famine, and civil strife, why should I keep you alive? Come, be food for me, a fury to the rebels, and a byword to the world, which is all that is now wanting to complete the calamities of the Jews." She killed him. She roasted the body. She ate half of it and covered the rest. When the rebels smelled the meat and burst in, expecting a feast, they were confronted with the leftovers. Mary, standing there with the wild eyes of a predator, offered it to them. "This is my own son," she said. "I have eaten of him. Be not more delicate than a woman, or more tender-hearted than a mother." The rebels, men who had waded through blood, fled the house in terror. The story spread through the city like wildfire. It spread to the Roman camp. When Titus heard of it, he reportedly looked up to the sky and declared to God that he was innocent of this crime, that he had offered peace, but they had chosen this hell. The taboo had been broken. Humanity had left Jerusalem. Shortly after, the end came. In August, the Roman battering rams finally breached the inner walls. The legions poured into the city like a river of iron. They were angry. They were tired. They had spent months living in the dust, watching their friends die, and hearing the horror stories from inside the walls. They had no mercy left to give. They slaughtered everyone they saw. Old men, women, children. It didn't matter. The narrow streets became slippery with blood. Josephus writes that in some places, the blood was so deep it actually put out the fires that were burning in the houses. The final stand happened at the temple, the second temple, the center of the Jewish world, a structure of white marble and gold that was said to rival the sun in its brightness. Titus had allegedly given orders to spare the temple. He wanted it as a trophy. But in the chaos of battle, a soldier threw a burning torch through a golden window. The dry cedar wood caught fire instantly. The destruction was total. The gold melted and ran down the stone steps. The screams of the people burning inside mixed with the roar of the Roman soldiers celebrating outside. When the smoke finally cleared, Jerusalem was gone. Not just conquered, erased. The historian Tacitus estimates that 600,000 people died. Josephus puts the number at over 1 million. 97,000 survivors were rounded up. They were sold into slavery, sent to the mines in Egypt, or saved for the gladiator arenas, to be eaten by lions for the amusement of the Roman mob. The treasures of the temple, the golden menorah, the silver trumpets, were hauled back to Rome. You can still see them today. If you go to Rome, look at the Arch of Titus. Carved into the stone is the Parade of Victory, showing Roman soldiers carrying the holy artifacts of a destroyed people. It is a monument to triumph. But now when you look at it, you will know the cost. The siege of Jerusalem forces us to ask a terrifying question. We like to think that we are civilized. We like to think that we have rules, morals, and lines we will never cross. But the story of Mary tells us something different. It tells us that civilization is a thin layer of ice. And if you apply enough pressure, if you apply enough hunger, enough fear, enough desperation, that ice cracks. Underneath, we are all just animals trying to survive. If you were in Mary's position, trapped between a slow death and an unthinkable act, can you say with 100% certainty what you would do? Or is every human just 3 days of hunger away from becoming a monster? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and I want to know where you draw the line. And if you think the Romans were merciful to those they captured, you are wrong. The nightmare didn't end when the walls fell. It just moved to a different location. Click on this video right here to see what happened in the Roman triumph parades, where staying alive was often a punishment worse than death. I'll see you there.